we shall do section 3, number 2, do schools really kill creativity? It's about mind mapping. The last time we did the first lesson of the section 3, and that was summary writing. Now we look at mind mapping. Icebreakers. Observe the given figure and complete the activities that follow. You have there the diagram of a tree and other branches going in 3 different directions, and further after branches you get twigs. Okay, so the tree, branches, and then twigs are very small branches. Replace the main idea by any other thought or title of your own. So they talk about trees, we can talk about something else, any other subject or title that you'd like to talk about. Add 3 supporting ideas to the main idea as their branches. Okay? And add 2 ideas to one of the branches that explains the meaning of the branch. So there are sub-branches to explain the meaning of that branch. For example, if you take, say, history, you have ancient history, modern history, contemporary history, 3 main branches, out of which each of them can be further divided into European medieval history or Asian medieval history. So you can have sub-branches, and that can go to further sub-branches according to countries perhaps. So that is what mind mapping is about, as we shall see. Complete the given blank spaces or balloons with your ideas in the figure that describes your basic preparation for the HSC board examination. Also complete the activities that follow. So it's mainly this whole chapter is about activities to show you how to prepare any idea, how it goes into sub-ideas and further sub-ideas. For example, here it's about preparing for the HSC board exam. So they've given one possible thing that you will be doing, thorough reading of the textbooks. That's like the foundation you will take. Then there are other things that you do. You attend school and lectures. Maybe some of you also attend tutorial classes. Or you plan your revision, homework, you do homework, read the lesson again, and finally the last minute preparation or the organized and programmed preparation for the exam according to subject. So all that, these are the various things that you do to do well in your board exam. So this is what mind mapping is about. What is your target? How are you going to achieve that target? What are the main areas and the sub-areas, you can say. Here the activity, let's see. Complete a similar type of detailed geographical figure in your own style, showing the thoughts or ideas or concepts that keep on generating in your mind. And then you choose a particular style or design or a graphical representation to describe the same idea, facts, situations. Then this type of presentation can be called mind mapping. So mind mapping is really organizing the ideas in your mind around one key idea or main idea, then the sub-ideas of that, and further sub-ideas of that. Okay, so that is what mind mapping is about. So you have, for example, different diagrams you can draw. You can draw your own diagram. You don't have to follow these only. It's all about organizing your thoughts or your knowledge or what you understood about any particular topic. Julie Assel is the Director of Education at the RSA, that is the Royal Society of Arts. Previously, he worked in number 10 Downing Street as Deputy Director of the British Prime Minister's Policy Unit and Senior Policy Advisor to Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg. Previously, he was the Director of Centre Forum, a Westminster-based think tank. He has also worked as a post-conflict advisor to the British government in Whitehall and to the United Nations in Bosnia and Kosovo. In the most watched TED talk of all times, educationalist Sir Ken Robinson, FRSA, claims that schools kill creativity. That means schools are one place where children lose whatever creativity they have. They feel like doing this and that, but the schools kill all that and make them fit into a sort of straitjacket onto a fixed curriculum. Arguing that we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it, or rather we get educated out of it. Yet, to Robinson, creativity is as important as literacy, and we should afford it the same status. So, creativity is as important as literacy. Literacy has certain norms to be able to read and understand. You must know your vocabulary, you must know first of all your basic alphabet, then how to read words, their meanings, then what relation the words have each other due to grammar, whether it's a subject or the object, whether the cat killed the rat or did the rat kill the cat. So literacy tells us to understand, but there are norms, and if we don't follow the norms, we will understand wrong if at all we understand. Let's see here this little mind mapping thing. So Ken Robinson claims, first, schools kill creativity. Education is getting out of creativity. Yet, creativity is acquired in education itself. Therefore, to get creativity, you have to first kill creativity and then come out of that process and become creative, acquired again in education. Therefore, you have to get through education in order to be creative. At the same time, education seems to kill creativity. True creativity is based on knowledge, which is in turn based on literacy. So, without knowledge, we cannot have ideas. Ideas are words again, and therefore we have to have knowledge of those words in order to be creative. And that comes from literacy, the ability to read and understand what you read. Our schools, where children develop the literacy skills on which all further learning depends, are therefore not killing creativity, but cultivating it by providing the foundations young people need to be properly creative. So, what this author is saying is that true creativity is not achieved by destroying education, but rather education is the means through which one can become creative. So our literacy skills depend on education. Therefore, education and schools where we get our literacy do not kill creativity, but rather they are the means to creativity. That's what he says there. Therefore, literacy and our schools give the foundation on which creativity can be built. As evidence of how schools' creativity, Robinson cites the example of a young girl called Gillian Lynn, who at the age of 8 was already viewed as a problem student with a probable learning difficulty due to her inability to sit still and concentrate. So Robinson, who's against schools, saying that schools kill creativity, he gives the example of a girl called Gillian, who was considered a person not able to learn, who had a probable learning difficulty. And why? Because she couldn't sit still. She couldn't sit in one place quietly and concentrate. When her mother sought a medical explanation for Gillian's constant fidgeting, all the time moving, hands moving, feet moving, turning here, turning there, all that, her fidgetiness and lack of focus. So when the mother came to the doctor with these problems of her child, the doctor suggested they speak privately. That means the doctor and the child will speak privately. As the two adults got up to leave, the doctor turned on the media. Left alone in a music-filled room, young Gillian began to dance. Observing her through the window, the doctor turned to her mother. "Gillian's not sick," he said. "She's a dancer." Today, at the age of 92, Gillian can look back on a long career in ballet dance and musical theatre, which saw her become one of the world's most successful choreographers. with hits like Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats and Phantom of the Opera among her many achievements. So this girl was considered as, she will not learn very much because she can't sit still. She can't focus. She can't concentrate. So she's not likely to learn much. So when the mother took this girl to the doctor, he just said, we'll move out and leave her alone. Okay? So just that they speak privately, the mother and the doctor can speak privately, and they left the girl alone. Before leaving, the doctor turned on music. Okay, he turned on the radio with some music on it. So when she was alone, what did this girl do? She didn't sit quiet and still, or turn around and look around and then switch with things. She started dancing. The moment the music started, she started to dance. The doctor was observing her from outside the window. So the doctor then told the mother, Jillian is not sick. She's a dancer. So that is her field. Today at the age of, so then at the age of 9, in the meantime, Julian went through her career as a dancer. Luckily, her mother must have gone and changed her from school to a dancing school where she could learn and give full freedom to her inner instincts, her inner talents. And she became a very famous dancer and a choreographer. A choreographer is one who arranges dances, who plans and sits and writes out dances, the steps, the movements, the actions, to the music that is provided. So that's the choreographer, and also arranging it for groups, not only for one hour dancer, for groups of dancers also. So that is choreography, and she became a famous choreographer, one who writes dance, in a way creates dances for different programs, different cinema, films, or different occasions. So she's one of the world's most famous choreographers, with hits like Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats and Phantom of the Opera. These are two famous operas by Andrew Lloyd Webber, very famous all over the world. And she's the one who has organized, created, and trained the choreographer, the dancers for that. Yet the school had all but written her off, but the school said that she was not fit to learn, mistaking her extraordinary talent for some form of behavioral problem. So the talent to dance, to move her body, to move her limbs, so that was mistaken as inability to learn. Okay? For some behavioral problem or cognitive problem. Cognitive means the ability to learn or to know. Impairment again means disability, some lack of some inability. So that is impairment. A weakness in one area. So this is what Robinson says. In schools, they simply label children not meant to learn, not fit for learning, low IQ. Whereas the same child may be very good at something else. And so often we read about school dropouts who become famous in some other field, either in the field of finance, in the field of industry, in the field of IT. So in so many various ways they shine. So schooling is the ability, the school does not have the ability to recognize a person's talent perhaps. Then we have their Gillian Lynn. Now this development of hers is in a way put in the form of a mind mapping program there, sort of figure there. So Gillian Lynn, young girl, 8 years of age, called a problem student. Problem was inability to sit still and concentrate. Mother took her for medical explanation. The doctor turned on the radio. Gillian was alone and began to dance. So the steps, how her development took place, from a negative sort of labeling in school to what she finally reaches. So she began to dance. Doctor's opinion, not sick, but a dancer. Then it goes on to the career. Career at the musical theatre in ballet dance, was more successful choreographer. The school had ignored her extraordinary talent. The school teachers were not in a way trained or programmed and taught how to recognize other things. They were taught their subjects and they taught that. And those who couldn't fit into that were labeled as unable to learn. So this is one way of mind mapping the history or the development of this girl, Gillian. A huge amount of research on skill acquisition has found that skills developed by training and practice are very rarely generalized to other areas and are in fact very closely related to the specific training. So skill acquisitions don't come in general. They come when you're in a specific training which suits your talents. It's there when your skills come out. So just by learning history and geography, a mathematical mind may not shine. Because skills are not general. They are very often related to a specific task or a specific area of human life. So that's what it says. A huge amount of skill acquisition has found that skills developed in training and practice are very generalized. It doesn't come from general schooling, okay, to other areas, and in fact, very closely related to the specific training. So if when you get that specific training, then you can bloom. It is certainly unhelpful and probably wrong, therefore, to talk about critical thinking skills. Critical thinking is an important part of most disciplines, and if you ask disciplinary experts to describe what they mean by critical thinking, you may well find considerable similarities in the responses of mathematicians and historians. The temptation is then to think that they are describing the same thing, but they are not. Well, the approach to critical thinking is always in a way somehow common. They look for what is good, what is productive, or what leads to progress, or how to develop, how to solve problems, especially for mathematicians. Historians will go into other details of history. So, but some of their conclusions may be similar. Okay, there are some similarities, but that doesn't mean that critical thinking is common in all fields of study. The same is true of creativity. Just as critical thinking is different in different fields. Critical thinking in music or in dance or in art, in painting, would be different from critical thinking in philosophy or mathematics or something else. Though the steps may be in a way somehow same, but the content will be very different. The same is true for creativity. Creativity is not a single thing, but in fact a whole collection of similar but different processes. So there are some similarities, but many more dissimilarities or differences. Creativity in maths is not the same as creativity in visual art. An artist drawing a scene or a landscape, and a mathematician doing mathematical problems at lightning speed calculations. They are two different things. Okay, so creativity in maths is not the same as creativity in art. If a student decides to become creative in mathematics by deciding that 2 plus 2 equals 3, be creative. 2 plus 2 is a normal thing. So be creative and say 2 plus 2 is 3. No, that is not being creative. It is just silly. Since the student is no longer doing mathematics doesn't allow you to say that 2 plus 2 make 3. So just by saying something new, it doesn't mean you're creative. You're just simply wrong. Creativity involves being at the edge of a field, but still being within it. So creativity in art is being within the field of art and in that field being creative. Don't put something else into the field and say that's creative. Okay, so art is visual. Visual arts are visual arts. Oral arts or audio arts are audio arts. Within that field, you cannot break the rules of that field and say you're creative. That's what is said here. Similar arguments can be made for other 21st century skills, such as problem solving, communication, and learning how to learn. So all these things, each area has its own creativity. There is some evidence that students who learn to work well with others in one setting may be more effective doing so in other settings. So some transfer is definitely possible. So if you can learn together with others in one area, maybe you can also learn together with others in other areas, possible. So some amount of transfer from one field to another is possible. However, the really important message from the research in this area is that if you want students to be creative in mathematics, You have to teach this in mathematics classrooms. So creativity in maths can come only through mathematics classrooms and not through history classrooms or something else. If you want students to think critically in history, you have to teach them this in history. Mastering disciplines, learning to communicate effectively, engaging civically in discussions and arguments. These have been and should be at the forefront of all education. Basic skills like communicating, talking civilly in discussions and arguments also. The ancients talked about the importance of understanding what is true and what is not, what is beautiful and what is not worth lingering over, and what is good in terms of being a worthy person, worker, and citizen. These educational goals should be perennial. To be good as a human being in dealing with others, these are perennial values or goals. Look how it's with the 21st century, transfer of skills, communication, problem solving, learning how to learn. So that's another form of mind mapping. The short answer is no, although they certainly can if they forget two important lessons. So when is this not possible? When we forget two important lessons. First, that if maximum number of children, with the maximum number of children are to be given the greatest possible chance of realizing their creative potential, schools need to provide rich and broad curriculum that includes the so-called creative subjects that are the visual and performing arts. So to give really a good education for many and yet satisfying all, then it has to give a wide variety of subjects. That is again put here in a mind map which you can read. And second is that if they are serious about cultivating real creativity across the curriculum, they need to remember that creativity describes a whole collection of similar but dissimilar but different processes. In other words, they need to understand the central place of the disciplines in education and take them as their starting point in curriculum design. So there should be variety as well as some discipline. Thank you.